Okay, so regarding the reflection papers, some of you felt that it has not been communicated clearly that you need to provide images in those reports. So tell me about that. Yeah. All right, well, in the delivery instructions, I guess it says so. The reflection paper must, underlining must, contain visuals of your work. Yeah, you may take screen grabs. It's just my suggestion of how you get images out of whatever it is that you're working on. I mean, we could have a discussion of semantics, but it does say it must contain visuals of your work. I've mentioned it several times in lectures. I've stressed the fact that you should be saving iteratively so you can go back, also to document your work. Is there another point? You had a point? Right. Right. So, for a good grade, as far as the how many images and so forth, I don't dictate how many images, a set number. It's just going to be you need to show the process. So if you have a subdivision model of a spoon or a cup like that you mentioned, you need to show how you arrived at that shape. Don't not just show the final model. So whether you started from a flat model and then sort of like what I've shown that I like to do, I start with a polygonal plane and I shape the topology, then you would start with an image of that. So if you haven't saved iteratively and you can't go back in time to those early stages, then you have to recreate, at least make an effort to try to show in your report how you arrived at those shapes for a good grade. You need to show both a progression, how you arrived at the final shapes, not just include the final work. Other points is how many images. I don't know. I don't want to. It's not necessary to provide like huge amounts of data and just bombard us with images. It's more like applying your own judgment. You have to sort of show progress, show the progression in your work. I also don't mandate you necessarily to do it for every little object and every little piece. But if you only show the final work, then you're not showing the progression. You're not showing how you arrived at those shapes. And there's no way for me to know, or for the examiner to know. Yeah, so I mean, if you want to submit something without images, don't do that. That will be a fail. You know, you're free to challenge the grade, and you can make the case that this has been communicated poorly. I will disagree with that, and there you go. So there's an assessment rubric. This is not really, This is more for the assessment. This is what I would look at, and the other internal examiner will look at. And also, if you choose to challenge the grade, and it goes to someone else to look at it. I don't send all the Maya files. We send the report. I've mentioned this before in lectures. It should be clear that, of course, if we send only the written report, your work needs to be documented in the report. And this was stated in the previous documentation that, okay, granted you thought it was messy, but it's still, you have to sit down and read the course documentation, right? And it's also stated in the new course documentation. It must include visuals. It underlines must. So I'm sorry. But, Anyways, so this is more, if you're really interested in a good grade, you can have a look at this. This is an assessment rubric. It's sort of like again, an examiner assessing your work will be given as a guide. So in terms of the reflection paper, I'm just going to go through this, and I'm recording this, so it should be very clear. Reflection paper, documentation. This is for a fail, F. You see there's a weighting here. So it says, documentation of the work through images is missing or extremely limited and lacking in relevance. So even if you include some images, but it's just kind of irrelevant, it's a fail. And if you have questions about any of these, feel free to raise them right now. So for a minimal grade, some images are provided of the work, but inadequately document progression and workflows used. Reflection is inconsistent and irrelevant to topics and workflows covered in the course. So yeah, you also reflect upon your work, but it's just not really relevant. Technical aspects are not demonstrated or incoherent, so that's you don't really show anything in terms of topology, UV layouts. It's not clear, and it just shows an extremely limited understanding. But if you can at least just put something in there that would indicate an really limited understanding, you could still achieve a passing grade. Okay, there needs to be something there. And here, images are provided which for a D. Images are provided which demonstrate the process. The technical aspects are documented, but images may be unclear. So maybe it's not really clear, but you do show the process. Reflection is provided, but shows a superficial and somewhat lacking understanding of workflows. Okay, so you reflect, but it's a little superficial. It doesn't really go too deep. And this is C. So typically, my view on this, and a lot of examiners, a C is typically what we ask for. So if you submit something that, okay, this checks all the boxes, typically that would be a C, right? So it says here images are provided, but it could still be lacking, right? For a C, everything doesn't have to be perfect. But so images are provided which demonstrate the process. The technical aspects are adequately documented, such as topology and UV layouts. This is in your reflection paper, in the documentation, right? Reflection is provided which demonstrates coherency with workflows covered in the course. So you're reflecting and it's coherent according to what we've been through in the course. You're not just rambling about stuff. That's a C. B. Images are provided which shows visual reference. So for a B, you need to also be showing sort of a visual reference. It could be concept art or it could be just reference images. Point is that you show it in the report. And you also show work in progress of the modeling, leading to a finished model. The technical aspects are also thoroughly demonstrated, so you need to really show all these technical characteristics of your models. A critical reflection is provided which demonstrates an analytical and thorough understanding. So for a B, you need to have all these, it's a little more thorough, okay? And for the A, typically that's a little bit more creative. You have to, even take this a little bit further. So I'm just going to read through that for the A. So the reflection paper itself is creatively executed and provides insight through use of images, labels, and descriptive text. So it's like, okay, you don't really rely on me to tell you all the little minimum things that you need to do, No, but you're just being creative. You're applying your own judgment. You just make sure that this document really shows your process. And you need to be creative with it. You can use images, you can use text, you can label stuff, do whatever you want. I suggest you take screen grabs from Maya, of course, and I use words like you may use. Doesn't mean that you can submit something without visuals. I think that should be pretty clear. The process is clearly shown through iterative stages, so you show the iterations like we're talking about, and demonstrates progression and workflows utilized from a visual reference to the finished asset. So again, you include some visual reference. You also document that in the report, so we know what did you base this work on, even if it's your own doodle or sketch or an image that you used. Technical aspects are meticulously documented. So you really make sure that the reader understands the technical aspects of your asset, how you solve topology, UV layouts, also different image maps that we're going to be covering later on today, all of that. A critical reflection is provided which illuminates workflows and provides insight. So there's a little bit more insightful into methods used and discoveries made. So it's more... It's even a little bit more. It's a bit more insightful. Like you're showing that you're discovering things. Maybe you made some interesting observations, things like this. It's not just ticking the boxes. Yeah, you have reflection, but you're actually providing some interesting and exciting insights. That's for an A. Maybe I'll just run through this. If you're bored, and feel free to do other things. But I'm just going to sit here and then I am recording it, so then there you have it. So in terms of the CG assets for the modeling and the UVs, and it says as demonstrated in reflection papers. So obviously if you don't have it in the reflection paper, it's not like you didn't do it. The reflection paper is the document that you submit. Okay, so the CG assets for a fail. The CG assets inadequately demonstrate a command of modeling techniques. Content might be missing, so maybe you don't have it. Or the work demonstrates a highly superficial and incomplete use of modeling and UV mapping, stuff like that. So very, very lacking or missing, obviously. So let's just read the E. The CG assets show inadequate complexity, so it could be very, very, very simple, and or technical detail, but a superficial understanding of modeling techniques is demonstrated. Topology is unstructured. Some areas of illegal topology, such as n-gons, which are polygons with more than 4 sides, one edge thickness, unbeveled hard corners, etc. And I just put etc. This is just an overview, an assessment rubric. The examinators will still have access to the the text given in the assignment. Okay, so in the assignment it states da 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 da. Okay, in the assignment text. UV solutions are present but unstructured and insufficiently laid out with large texture distortions and uneven textile densities. Subdivision modeling is not present, extremely limited, or formless. So maybe you attempted some subdivision modeling, some interesting shapes, but it's just very, very limited or shows just strange shapes with messy topology, right? But you can still achieve a minimum grade, an E. Something is there, you show an very, very minimal understanding, but still, you can achieve a grade. For a D, the CG assets show a confidence in modeling techniques, but inadequate complexity. So, you see that you know how to model, but you just maybe you didn't apply yourself, you didn't spend a lot of time on it. Topology and UV solutions are unstructured, but serve to display textures. Some texture distortions and uneven textile density might be present. Subdivision modeling is present, but limited. So, we do want to see that you actually attempted some modeling. You have some interesting shapes, but it's kind of limited. The CG assets may be quite simple, simple, and not logically divided into multiple meshes. For instance, okay, maybe, it's easier if we just start reading the C perhaps, because like I said, the C is sort of what we would be looking for. That's sort of the minimum. If you deliver something that checks all the boxes, yeah, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this, it's a C. So the CG assets are precise and coherent to technical standards, such as quad-based topology with logical edge flow, beveled edges in hard corners, no single edge thickness, no visible back faces, and again, just etc. This, you have to refer back to the assignment text. They also demonstrate an overall adequate level of complexity. UV maps are sufficiently optimized with minimal texture distortion or uneven textile so it shouldn't have uneven textile density. Subdivision modeling is demonstrated by at least one adequately complex shape with logical topology achieved by subdivision modeling. So that would be, for instance, if you actually modeled a cup or a teapot and you show the topology and preferably you show how you arrived at it, then that would be a C. Well, for a C, you wouldn't necessarily even show too much iterative steps. The CGAs's are accurately divided into several meshes according to their construction. So let's say you have the teapot and you actually have the lid separate. Very simple example. You get the idea. So all the stuff we've been talking about, this is it. For the C, you just check all these boxes. For the B, the CGAs meet sophisticated technical standards and a high command of modeling is demonstrated by at least some intricate meshes constructed by precise subdivision modeling techniques. It's just a little bit more complexity in terms of the shapes you're able to arrive at by applying subdivision modeling. And then, of course, it's very helpful just at least make an attempt at showing, if you didn't save iteratively, make an attempt at showing. Show us, how did you arrive at that shape? Even if you describe it and then you make simple drawings of how you did, well, I started flat and then I did this and that. Okay. The topology and edge flow are accurate and fit the shape of the objects logically. UV maps are highly optimized with minimal texture distortion and even textile density. Assets show an ambitious level of complexity while staying true to a chosen visual style. So again, for B, we also kind of look at your reference. Did you achieve, is it similar to the reference you provided, whether that is your own concept art, some external concept art, or just images as a reference. The CGAs's are accurately divided into several meshes according to their construction, so again, with smaller detail elements where applicable. So you make, just higher level of detail, probably. And again, for the A, I'm just going to read it. The CGAs's demonstrate authoritative command of modeling workflows. This just shows that you're really confident, obviously, containing excellent technical standards such as quad-based. A lot of this is the same, it's just different semantics. Excellent technical standards such as quad-based logical topology and some intricate meshes achieved through subdivision modeling, showing a creative use of creasing edges to arrive at complex shapes. So it shows that you actually really command using, you arrive at more complexity because you know how to tweak creasing edges like we were talking about in subdivision modeling. So obviously the more complex the shape, it doesn't have to be complexity. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily so very advanced. It could be a simple little piece, but the actual shape is quite complex to arrive at. It shows that you really understand the subdivision modeling workflows. UV maps are highly optimized with minimal texture distortion and perfectly coherent textile density. The level of complexity is highly ambitious. For the A, you need to, you're quite ambitious in terms of the complexity, and demonstrates a creative so here again it's more creative and exciting execution based on visual reference or concept art. So for the A, typically we're looking for something that's a little bit more, it just shows that you're being a little bit more ambitious. We're using words like creative, exciting. So this has us as examinators a little bit excited about your submission. It's not just ticking the boxes. So blah blah blah, based on visual reference or concept art, right? So the CGAs are constructed in a persuasive way, divided into separate meshes according to their construction, with a high attention to smaller detail elements. So it's just more complexity, more attention to detail. Should be a little bit more exciting, more creative, more ambitious. Again, semantics, words, but words matter, and this is again just to get our heads straight when we're trying to kind of put you in one of these boxes. So if you read through these, I'm sure you would kind of get an idea and a feeling for, if you do a self-evaluation, where do you sort of fit, maybe, where you feel your work would land currently. Okay, as for the texturing, again, it says as demonstrated in reflection papers. That's where your work is documented. For a fail, the CGI has failed to demonstrate any understanding of texturing techniques. So, you don't have any textures. The CGIs are textured with color maps, but may be inconsistent with the UV layout. It is incomplete, not demonstrating sufficient customization, and effects of weathering are absent. It may also be inconsistent with standard resolution and formats. So it's just, it's a little messy. You're not adhering to set resolutions. It doesn't really match the UV layouts. You didn't really customize the texture, but you have some texture. It's a color map. Okay, so you could still, again, achieve a grade. An E is a passing grade. You get a grade. It's very, very minimal. For a D, the CG assets are textured with color maps. It's customized somewhat to the UV layout, but may be limited in detailing. It may also be inconsistent with standard resolutions and formats. So even for a D, you show that you have some more customization, and at least you make the texture belong more to the object. But for the C, again, this is sort of what we're looking for. The CG assets are textured with color maps in a standard 1:1 image resolution. So that's what we talked about, like 512, 256, 1024, 2048, 4096. You don't have to, but at least it's a 1:1 image resolution. If it's not, you probably have a good reason for it, but you would explain it. But this is what we're looking for. It's customized to be consistent with the UV layout and demonstrates careful customization to the CG asset by ways of weathering. So edge wear, cavity dirt, faded surfaces, which we touched upon last time. We sort of had a look in Photoshop how you could go in and make these weathering effects non-destructively using blending modes and layer masks, stuff like that. Again, these are techniques that ideally you want to include in your report. How did you arrive at it? You don't have to write a novel about it, but you show it. This is how I did it. For a B, the CGSs are textured with the following image maps in standard 1:1 image resolution. So color map, specular map, bump map, possibly also transparency map, and emissive map. These are map types we'll be talking about at 11:30. We go through the last lecture. It's just following up on the previous lecture. So if you spent this time from last time till now actually getting acquainted with Photoshop, making color maps, stuff like that, you will not have much problems today. But we'll make an interesting demonstration where we just apply all of these maps so you'll understand what they're all about. So, all maps demonstrate careful customization to the CG asset by ways of weathering. So edge wear, cavity dirt, faded, same thing. It just shows that you're actually customizing the texture, making it feel like it belongs to the model. All maps are accurately connected to a blend shader in Maya, achieving the final look. So it just means that you're connecting things to the right places. So the specular maps to the specular color. If you have a transparency map, it goes to transparency. Obviously, the bump map is correctly set up, and so forth. Again, this is just technically you're connecting it accurately. For an A, again, you go a little bit further. So let me read the A. The CG assets are textured with the following image maps. It's the same thing. So color map, specular map, bump map, blah, blah, blah. All maps demonstrate careful customization to the CG asset by ways of weathering, so that's also the same. But all maps are creatively adjusted to a blend shader in Maya, achieving an exciting final look. So again, we're using words like exciting. It's just like, okay, you went a little bit further, which is clearly presented in a final presentation render. And that, like I said in parentheses, can be a screen grab. So this is not a rendering class, but obviously you do need to show the effects of the map, so you can provide screen grabs from your Maya viewport of the final look of the textures. And, again, if you just spend a little bit more time and you're also a bit creative with your report, I would include the maps. Here are my maps, and I would include them in the report. Here if you're very creative with it, you can say, here are the result of the asset. You can compare only a color map versus a specular map and a bump map, and these are here's the result with all the maps applied. Here's only the color map. You can make comparisons like that. You're being creative with the report. Just you know, I don't like always just stating explicitly how you do things. Again, same goes for the report. If you're just creative with it, your mindset should be make sure the reader understands this, and you provide your own reflection. So even if you let's say you made a specular map and technically it's great and you were quote unquote creative with it, but you feel like this doesn't really have much of an effect. Maybe it would, and then you could make a reflection like, well, maybe that would show up more in an animation because then you can really see the light reacting to the surface. But that's something that you're not able to show in still images. If you provide that reflection, it shows that you actually have a higher understanding of the way these maps work. Okay, so even if you don't arrive at something you yourself feel is just perfect, you can still achieve an A. Okay, because you really tried and you've experimented and you make some observations and you say, well, maybe this would be better in so and so because of such and such. Right. So this document will be given to the other examiner, and again, if you choose to challenge the grade, this is what will be sent also along with this, the delivery instructions that were provided, and of course all the texts for the assignments and the everything, right? So the examiner will have access to all the documents. so So then if you make the case that, well, it was communicated poorly that I needed to have visuals, that's why I don't have visuals, be my guest. You make that case. I'm going to say, well, I don't agree with that. Because I don't agree with that. I do agree with the course documentation being, at one point, a little bit messy, but efforts have been made to correct that. And even in the new documentation, it says it must contain visuals. So to me, that's not really up for debate, but I'm not gonna debate that issue with you. Anyways, that's it. Questions? Yes. Yeah, so this is an interesting question. So if you've done the kitchen and you feel that maybe it's not up to, like, if you're going for an A, would you rather spend more time on your A6, which is the optional asset that you're making? Yes, I would. But I would also spend enough time making sure that I would actually say yes to both. The kitchen also needs to be good. If you feel that it's not really up to the standards, you feel yeah, it could hurt your grade if you're shooting for an A. Because to be fair, the A6 is optional. You can show excellence. If you're shooting for an A, you should probably consider doing the A6. But yeah, the kitchen would probably also need to show that you've been creative with it. Also, that you've been a bit ambitious in terms of the complexity. Yeah. It will all factor in. But yeah, I would worry more or care more about that the A6 if you choose to do that. Because that's where you can really show that you've been creative with it. 'Cause that's your whole entire independent project, which used to be mandatory. Because I personally that prefer having a bit more open assignments, but that's optional. But always for an A, we just want to see that you're applying your own judgment to things. Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, well, I hear you, but I don't agree because in this portfolio assignment, you do have up until the last minute to perfect all of the assignments. So you will also be resubmitting all of the reflection papers in Inspira. You will you can make any changes to anything up until the last minute. The reflection papers you've currently submitted are just for me to say, to give you a pointer. No, I don't think this would pass, or yeah, you're good. Okay, but you will be resubmitting everything final hand in through Inspira on December 6th. Have you tried submitting through Inspira before? Right. So it's pretty simple. It's just a normal online uploading thing, but it's through this other system called Inspira, which is the new delivery system that we use. There was a question back there first. No, I I was not imagining there would be more feedback sessions on the reflection papers because you've submitted them. If you received some comments from me, I would look into it. And if you're really curious, if you want to send it my way before you hand it in, you can just reach me, and we'll do that on individual basis. If you want to email me, you want to contact me, if you want to have a look at it, I can have a look at it. But the feedback you've gotten, or the short little comment I made for you to address, was pretty much the feedback for the reflection papers. Because this is, there's not a lot of time left. You have to apply your own judgment, and you will be assessed finally on the reflection papers. If I'm to go in there and assess it before I don't know. I think they're. If you want to send it my way, I can look at it briefly, and I'll let you know if I feel still that there's something missing. Just contact me on an individual basis, and I'll be happy to do that. But I would have a look at this again if I were you. Just you sort of get a feeling for where you're at. Probably. There's a question up here. When it opens? I don't know. Probably December 5th or something. More importantly, it closes at December 6th at 2. Oh, and there will be no late deliveries. No deliveries by email, because it's the online thing. If it's not in Inspira by that deadline, again, it's like it didn't deliver. Very unfortunate. Excellent questions. Other questions? You will not be submitting the Maya files to Inspira. Only the reflection papers. So all your work needs to be documented in the reflection papers. You will be submitting the files to the local server and some I don't remember, some render images or something. You have to read the instructions, but that's mostly for archival purposes. We don't send them out to the examiner. Your work is documented in your papers. Yeah, otherwise, it would be very large files. We'd rather just have them here locally on the server. We make a backup of it. So, we like to archive your work, but like again, it's for archival purposes. It's not for the assessment. Good question. Other questions? Final questions? No more questions? All right. Yep. So I recorded this. If you want to have a recap of the assessment as far as the assessment goes, and I'll upload this for the people who weren't here. But I don't know. I just have to assume that you actually read the documentation. It's. I would have a look at this again if I were you. But this again, I mean, it's stated in the assignment description what you need to do, and you just make your best work. This is more for the assessment of your work. Anyways, yep, that's it.